It is frozen at the most extreme points of the axis around which our planet revolves. The South Pole can experience temperatures as low as -80 degrees. It is considerably warmer at the North Pole. It floats in the form of a gigantic ice floe between Siberia, Greenland and North America as a frozen no man's land, a fascinating world. Several expeditions have attempted to reach this terra incognita from Spitsbergen, a Norwegian archipelago in the Arctic Ocean. Blankets, clothing and food were transported on dog sleds, without which mobility over the raised ice would hardly have been possible. The Americans, Robert Peary and Matthew Henson, wanted to be the first to reach the North Pole in 1909. The physician Frederick Cook claimed to have already done so in the previous year. However, it was Umberto Nobile together with Lincoln Ellsworth and Roald Amundsen who were able to fly over the North Pole in an airship in 1926. Much more important than this race, however, was the scientific exploration of this icy region, which had already commenced 50 years previously with Admiral Tegetthoff. The Austro-Hungarian maritime expedition was headed by Karl Weyprecht and Julius von Payer. Weyprecht was searching for a year-round maritime passage through the northern seas to Asia. As the scientific director, Julius von Payer documented the journey which began in Bremerhaven. The sailing vessel had a coal-operated auxiliary engine. Its hull was reinforced to withstand the pressure of the ice. However, any hope of finding a year-round passage was dashed. The vessel was surrounded by pack ice until it froze tight and drifted with the ice over the sea. After 2 winters, the polar researchers decided to abandon the vessel and attempt to reach open water on foot, with their ship's boats as sleds. This turned into a march of 3 months and 560 kilometers, but with the exception of the cook who was weakened by illness, all 23 men survived. Von Payer and Weyprecht were initially welcomed home as heroes, but there were soon skeptics who cast doubt on their claims. For example, the discovery of an archipelago which they had christened Franz Joseph Land. Today, every school pupil knows the story of their polar expedition, and the Northwest Passage between the Atlantic and Pacific has also been discovered. Wealthy tourists travel increasingly often on the icebreakers of the researchers. We are approaching the Arctic Circle. Our journey into the depths of the Arctic begins there. Already at the end of the 19th century, individual polar tourists found a room in Longyearbyen, the center of Spitsbergen. Coal was later shipped from here. Steamships like this Swedish passenger vessel now embark from here for the Polar Sea. They make it possible for nature enthusiasts to have a look at one of the most fascinating landscapes in the world. Seals like it cool, but not cold. They enjoy the Nordic summer and lazing about, always in company. Only now and then does one leave the colony to search for fish. However, as summer is the mating season, perhaps he is looking for a female. The animals weighing more than 100 kilos are quite clumsy on land. However, in the water, they are elegant creatures which can submerge for up to 30 minutes without having to surface for air. A little further away, the first ice is already appearing on the coast of Spitsbergen. Drift ice appears primarily in summer when temperatures rise. The global warming of our planet is destroying the habitat of polar bears. There are still 25,000 of these animals in the world. Their number will drop to a third of this total in the next 30 years. The more the ice covering breaks apart, the harder it becomes for them to hunt their prey. On the ice, they blend perfectly with their hunting grounds, thanks to the color of their coat. They search for holes in the ice where seals surface to breathe. Walruses on the ice floe aren't suitable prey for them. They just escape back into the water. Since humans began destroying the habitat of the polar bears, the animals migrate and swim hundreds of kilometers to find a mostly closed ice covering. It is still permitted to hunt polar bears. Their coats are sold for high prices. The Inuit, the original inhabitants of the Arctic, used to kill the polar bears with harpoons from large kayaks. They needed the coats to survive in the brutal climate. However, firearms have turned the bears into prey. The polar bears don't like being in the crosshairs at all, even if tourists are only shooting with cameras here. It's not that easy to get solid ice under your paws again. The bear has to be satisfied with fish when there are no seals to catch. The tusks of the walrus are too long anyway. It can use them to defend itself against the bears. The bear returns to the surface with a fish in its jaws. The little fish isn't enough to satisfy its hunger. Two walrus bulls encounter one another on the shore. Like sumo wrestlers, they have an encounter ritual entirely their own. The struggles between the bulls can very well result in injuries. Walruses are forbearing and have grown used to quite a bit since civilization also reached the northernmost regions of the Earth. People with cameras are neither hunters nor food. The walrus in any case eats only crabs and crustaceans. It also wastes as little energy as possible in order to preserve its warming layer of fat. Walruses live in colonies that can encompass thousands of animals. They hunt in the water, but have to rest on land at intervals. In the northernmost regions of Sweden is the conservation area of Stekenjokk, a bird paradise. The rare ptarmigan, the alpine snow hen, translated literally from German, is only called that because it made its way to the center of Europe with the Ice Age, and thus to the Alps, where it still lives in the high mountains. These two birds are losing their white winter plumage and are preparing for the summer. The bearded seal changes not only its coat, but will soon also lose weight, the protective winter fat it accumulated, and which makes it seem plump and clumsy. As the loner among the seals, it is very suspicious when disturbed on its flow. Some icebergs are so gigantic that they have their own waterfalls. Blockhouses stand in Spitsbergen's Hamburg Bay. Here you can still find the conveyor belts of the abandoned mines. These boards were part of a shelter for whale and seal hunters. Reindeer lichen blooms between the dwarf birches. The dwarf birch is threatened by extinction and is very rare. In Central Europe, they are sometimes found on hill moors. The only approximately 1 meter high plant sprouts male and female catkins and fertilizes itself. When the snow begins to melt, not only the dwarf birch blooms. The moss is an important nutritional component of the reindeer, a type of stag that lives here, at the Arctic Circle. In winter, they migrate to slightly warmer areas, like here in Norway. They are wearing an especially thick winter coat. Reindeer can travel thousands of kilometers in herds encompassing up to 10,000 and more animals. It is the reindeer that first made it possible for humans to make inroads into the high north. They followed the herds. The self-sufficient animals also eat the frost-resistant hard grasses, or, like here, the algae driven ashore by the sea. The wood sandpiper spends the summer in the taiga and tundra at the edge of Europe. It most prefers to reside on the shores of shallow lakes, where it spends hours grooming its feathers and bathing. An astonishing number of animals find a home in the bleak landscape of Spitzbergen, with its sparse vegetation, especially in the polar summer. The puffin, a bird that can live just as easily on the coasts as in the water, nests on the other side of the island, where the cliffs fall steeply into the sea. The birds have spent the winter further south on the open sea. Now they come as pairs to the coasts in order to breed in colonies. The birds are not much larger than a domestic pigeon. Tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of them come together here on the coast. The sea provides enough food for all. The young birds are still a plain brownish white. Until they fledge, this protects them from enemies like Jaeger gulls. The parents still watch over their young, but soon they will lose their fuzz, have the same colors as them, and fly off into the expanses of the oceans. The South Pole, it consists not only of ice, but is, in fact, its own continent. Roald Amundsen and the Englishman Robert Falcon Scott attempted separately and in competition with one another to reach the Antarctic Pole. Amundsen was the victor. In December 1911, he was the first human to reach the South Pole. One of the last outposts are the Falkland Islands. They are located more than 500 kilometers off the coast of Argentina and belong to the United Kingdom. From here, passenger vessels embark in the direction of the South Pole. The English circumnavigator John Davis, in the service of Elizabeth I, discovered the Falkland Islands in 1592. Only a quarter of his crew subsequently survived the journey back to Europe because they could hardly find anything edible on the islands besides penguins and birds. Carcass Island is the largest of the Falkland Islands. Magellan cormorants, a South American variety of cormorant, fish between the cliffs. The oystercatchers are coastal and tideland birds that, due to pronounced agricultural usage, migrate increasingly to remote areas, even to the Falkland Islands. The common snipe is already threatened with extinction in Europe. they can still spend an undisturbed summer on Carcass Island. Only a few plants can survive in the hard climate, such as these lichen covering the rocks on the beach. The bluebell hyacinth is an immigrant, probably brought here by the English. This species of sorrel, on the other hand, is native. The furze is so adaptable that it can be found all over the world. The turkey vulture has only lived here as long as there have been sheep on the island, because it lives only from the carrion of dead animals. The former research vessel, Professor Molchanov, now only brings tourists to this remote part of the world. The steamer duck encounters a Magellan goose and drives it off. Magellan geese are found in the hundreds of thousands on the island and have already become a plague as far as the sheep farmers are concerned, as they graze the little bit of grass there is. Since the foxes were driven off, they have no more natural enemies. They have hatched their young in depressions in the ground. There can be up to 8. The caracara is one of the rarest birds of prey in the world. There are only around 1,000 breeding pairs. It watches from above for insects and worms or small vertebrates. The birds are very trusting. They have almost nothing to fear here. This still young animal can live for up to 20 years if humans and animals share their habitat in peace. The pristine white plumage of the kelp goose flashes on the beach. The males have a black beak and yellow feet. The female is wearing a protective brown coat over her white dress of feathers. Kelp geese live in pairs. They feed on seaweed and algae and are not hunted due to their tart flavor. Gypsy Cove Bay was once a popular destination for excursions for the around 1,000 inhabitants of the islands. However, the Argentinian invasion troops mined the dunes during the Falkland War of 1982. As the mines haven't been cleared since then, one false step can lead to an explosion. The penguins are too small and light to trigger a detonation. They profit from the unusual peace and quiet. Saunders Island is an uninhabited volcanic island that's repeatedly served as a base for whalers. Dolphin gulls comb the beach for snails, worms, and insects. The Gentoo penguin avoids the pack ice zone and prefers to live on solid ground. Its brooding colonies are on the beach or even in the hinterland. Each penguin broods 2 eggs. Male and female relieve one another. The nests are made of hard rocks. Penguins are so well insulated that they can maintain a body temperature of 39 degrees despite the cold. It takes 35 days for the eggs to hatch. While one partner broods, the other goes swimming in search of food. The rockhopper penguins are mountain climbers. Up to 100,000 of them push their way into narrow, steep rock clefts very close to the water when it is time to brood. In the apparent chaos, they find not only their old partners, but also their nesting places. Although it sometimes takes a while. In the past 30 years, the stock of rockhopper penguins on the Falkland Islands has dropped by almost 90%. Due to industrial-scale fishing, the animals were unable to build up reserves of fat for the brooding period. Hundreds of thousands starved. Ecotourism, pollution of the oceans and climate change are endangering the rockhopper penguins. Rockhopper penguins also like to hunt in groups in the ocean. With their wings redesigned as flippers and their streamlined bodies, they can move with great agility both on and under the water. They eat crustaceans like krill or small squid. On Saunders Island, in the midst of screeching gulls, live the king penguins. During the first weeks after hatching, their lives are anything but majestic. The young remain under the supervision of their parents for over a year until their feathering changes and they finally become independent. On the other side of the island, on a steep slope, lives a colony of black-browed albatross. They have their names from the pronounced marking above the eyes. The Falkland Islands are the most important brooding territory. 3/4 of their species are born here. They chose the slopes because these make it easier to take off due to the upwinds. A 1,000 birds live here in a community. Although there are sometimes disputes, they are very loyal and search out their old partner each year. Port Stanley, the only city on the Falkland Islands, was founded by a British governor in 1843. Today, around 2,000 inhabitants live in the tranquil port town. The small town at the end of the world could just as well be in England. Ships embark from here in the direction of South America. Sperm whales are found both north and south of the equator. In summer, they return to their respective colder waters at the poles. Before the coast of Argentina, a group of southern right whales frolic in a bay. Whales are mammals that migrated back into the water around 50 million years ago. However, they need to come to the surface regularly to breathe. Southern right whales like to stay in close proximity to land. They can grow to be 18 meters in length and weigh up to 80 tons. They live around the South Pole. In winter, they move northward into warmer waters to procreate. On the other side of the Falkland Islands in the southeast, far out in the sea, is the South Georgia archipelago. Many mariners have lost their lives in these lonely waters. Even today, it is still not entirely safe to navigate them because the Southern Ocean is one of the stormiest regions on Earth. Near the archipelago, the air cools down so much that it starts to snow. Most of the island is covered by ice and snow throughout the year. People only stay here for a short time. This makes for idyllic conditions for animals. Here, a pair of gentoo penguins are going on land, pursued by an eared seal. They are well cushioned so that they don't feel the hard rocks. The frizzy tussock grass is nonetheless more pleasant. The eared seals are protected by the Antarctic Treaty and are no longer endangered. Their numbers are increasing again, slowly. The rare wandering albatross broods on South Georgia. A young bird is bred every 2 years at the most under these inhospitable conditions. Its wings have a span of 3.5 meters. Unfortunately, the albatross is endangered because it is frequently caught in the lines of the fishing fleets when diving into swarms of fish. The predecessors of the Georgian teal were presumably driven here from the Falkland Islands by storms. Nonetheless, the species has made itself at home on the island. Plastic garbage finds its way to the most remote corners of the oceans. This brown skua, a Jaeger gull, examines the blue thing. Then he goes to bathe. People are leaving the bay again to explore another side of the island. The giant petrel is a predator, the worst enemy of the king penguin because it eats their young. However, it has discovered something else, prey that attracts several members of the same species. A dead seal is lying on the beach. Giant petrels are a kind of vulture of the seas. They eat carrion which they take apart with their sharp beaks. They can also injure each other when fighting. The feathers of the victor are soaked in blood following the meal. The giant petrels have their breeding sites in Cobbler's Cove on the east of South Georgia, very close to this monumental waterfall. A sea lion is searching here for territory for himself and his female. Soon, she will follow him for purposes of procreation. The elephant seals fight for the best spots in the colony. The 6-meter-long animals are not exactly small and also inflate their trunks to make even more of an impression on their opponents. Their struggle attracts many spectators. Among the king penguins are many half-grown young who will soon lose their brown feathers. Protected by the large birds, they form veritable kindergartens in which hundreds of young animals defy the cold. In any case, parents and young birds don't lose one another. They recognize each other by their calls. The feathers puffed up against the cold don't make it easier for them to move. Lying down, they can at least eat some snow. The white snowy sheathbill searches the colonies for parasites, feces, but sometimes also for the eggs of the penguins, and is therefore not a welcome visitor at all. The animals don't seem to have anything against human visitors. Only the tripod is not equal to the girth of the seal. Enough is enough. The king penguins trumpet their departure. In the northern part of this rough island landscape of South Georgia is a gigantic lowland plain between the Grace and the Lucas glaciers. The reindeer were left here by whalers and are now to be culled as they cause damage to this sensitive ecosystem. There are 500,000 king penguins and hundreds of thousands of marine mammals here. While the chattering penguin colony spreads unrest, the elephant seals lie immovable like rocks on the beach. A troop of penguins are going fishing. This is no short excursion because brooding birds swim around 20 kilometers out into the open seas before they dive for fish or krill. Only in the evening do they return to their colony. The rising temperatures are changing the habitat of many penguin species more quickly than can adapt. The king penguins are also endangered because they need almost a year to raise their young. During this time, they are finding less and less food. Marine mammals like seals and elephant seals can deal with climate change better. The precise consequences are difficult to predict because while the western Antarctic Ocean is growing increasingly warm, the pack ice boundary is expanding in the east. There, the ozone hole allows the warmth of the region to escape. How long will the survival of these species be ensured? And what does the melting of the South Pole mean for humans? By the time we receive definite answers to these questions, it will already be too late to avert the course. The elephant seal has awakened from its rest and now shows its power. It's difficult to move 3 tons on land. However, those with the most strength and endurance will have the largest harem of females. The challenger retreats. No blood has flowed. Things have changed. Over the centuries, bloody massacres have taken place on the beach. Grytviken was the base for whalers. The giant animals were dismembered and butchered here. However, at the beginning of the 20th century, the industrialization of whaling resulted in the near extermination of the gigantic animals. Fat and spermaceti were materials coveted by the industry. Today, whaling is only permitted with exceptional approvals. However, these too are disputed. Antarctic krill, the main food of the whales, needs ice for its larvae. This is why the whales travel in the direction of the pole in the Antarctic summer. Ice shelves indicate the proximity of giant glaciers. Because they are melted from below by the warming water, they break up into icebergs that move in a northerly direction. The icebergs transport life. The brown stains are the excrement of the Antarctic krill. The South Pole is getting closer. The Palmer Archipelago is a group of small islands off the coast of Antarctica. One can pass through them by ship along the so-called Neumayer Canal. The Bay of Port Lockroy, a former whaler harbour and military base, is a historical site. Today, experiments are carried out, among other reasons, to determine whether penguins suffer from tourism. It doesn't seem to cause them any harm, maybe because humans drive away the Jaeger gull. The ship approaches the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula, the western outlier of the continent, which is larger than Europe. It is a gigantic glacier and is covered by an ice sheet that is larger than the landmass itself. 70% of the fresh water of the Earth is found here. No other mammal can deal with the cold as well as the Weddell seal. It either lies on the ice or it hunts under the ice, but is never too cold. Like the penguin, it is equipped by nature with perfect heat insulation, waterproof fur, and a thick layer of fat under its skin. The young animal is only nursed and cared for by its mother for 6 weeks. Then it has to look after itself. A seal hunter was the first to discover the harbour of Deception Island, one of the South Shetland Islands. The chinstrap penguin, a small bird that is known for its fierceness and fearlessness, broods here. When searching for krill and small fish, it never goes far from its clutch of eggs, but instead always returns quickly. 5 million chinstrap penguins are said to live on this island. In the penguin community, all members observe the correct distance between nests, which, depending upon the colony, is 1/2 to 1 meter. They look for ground free of ice for their nest and build a circle of rocks there. Male and female rotate with the brooding around every 5 days. A sense of order must prevail where so many animals live together. As biologists have determined, the colonies are always located within the same distance of approximately 90 meters from the place where the penguins can enter the ocean. In the water, they move in elegant jumps like dolphins. Their young are already waiting to be fed. In 2 months, a new generation of penguins will populate the Antarctic. A frozen no man's land, a fascinating world.